Good evening, folks. Welcome to Monday Night Law here. What is this? September 30th, 2024. Lots of good things going on out there, or bad things. But good to see you all here. I know that people are already piled up over here on Telegram. Hey, Diesel D's, how you doing, brother? Rita Pop, who's her black eye? Dreaming Deer, Kathy Watson, how you doing, dear? So we're gonna go over a little bit of the Law of War manual and the Lieber Code and paint a little bit of a picture here tonight. One that's I've already talked about since 2017. The shit hitting the fan, all this stuff that's going on. And this, I decided to finally kind of sit down and actually read through the Law of War manual, and I really didn't even get that far. And jumped over to the Lieber Code. And it's just so overwhelming truth coming out of there to support what's actually going on today. Okay? Good to see you, James, out there on YouTube. You're the first one to make a comment over there. It's going to be a good one tonight, okay? I want you to really, really pay attention because this is going to explain how the continuity of government works, why we are under martial law, and essentially have been since the first general order, the Lieber Code General Order 100 from 1863. These pieces of the puzzle are going to come together here. And I think when I get done with this tonight, the picture should be a little bit more clear about what's really going on, where we're at, and why things are the way they are. Not so much as the corruption, what's being done about the corruption, and our current state of being. Brother Rob, good to see you, brother. All right. So let's just jump right into this because it's just I don't know. It just like these little tiny nuggets, right? Pieces of a puzzle. And when you take these little pieces of the puzzle and you start putting them in their proper place, it brings clarity to the overall picture. So, as we go through this, and I'm going to refer to some other things, and I'm going to have to look stuff up because I didn't really have much time to get fully prepared for what I really want to show you, even though I have covered these in several other videos. Again, going clear back to 2017, the proclamation, executive orders reestablishing the rule of law. I guess Rumble isn't playing, huh? Well, that's not cool. Nope, it sure isn't. Son of a gun. Well, apparently my broadcasting software. Didn't make the connection. Well, dang it. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on, well, I don't even know. Should be able to record, right? There it is. All right. So this is Monday Night Law, September 30th, 2024. I'm going to be going over the Law of War Manual and the Lieber Code and putting some pieces of the puzzle together about what's going on right now, what has been going on, based on the Law of War Manual, the Lieber Code, how things are supposed to be under martial law. Now, I would like to do a little tidbit here. A friend of mine, Art, out there in North Carolina, in the middle of all this chaos that's going on out there. It's not good, folks. Lots of flooding, lots of bridges washed out, communications are down, internet is down, 911 is down. There are some cell phone. I did get a phone call yesterday from him, and I talked to him this morning. It's no plastic, no cards. It's all cash only. People are shooting each other at the gas stations. Obviously, food shortages. I guess there's some Chinook helicopters that are bringing in food and supplies. FEMA is there. The National Guard is there. I guess the local police and stuff, they're actually doing good, according to Brother Art out there, what he is saying. So, some of this stuff is part of what's, I think, really what's going on, okay? They're using this stuff to their advantage. Unfortunately, there are people who are going to die, have already died. Unfortunately, this is war. This is what war looks like today, in these times. Jax, good to see you, Jax. So, all the prayer warriors out there, I ask you to pray for those out there in the devastated areas. Just pray that things get fixed. I know Florida, all that whole area there got really nailed, but it's pretty bad there in North Carolina, from what I'm understanding from Art. So I don't know if Art made it on here tonight. He didn't have internet. He said he was going to go over to somebody else's place and see if he could watch it. So, Eager Beaver, good to see you, brother. But yeah, this is war, right? Right? Now, one of the things that I had just heard, read something about the strike going on at the ports, is that they're tired of hearing women and children, whatever, screaming inside these crates and not being able to do anything about it. So that's going to bring, certain people's attention, military, to the ports. Now, it's been somewhat exposed there when the Evergreen went sideways there in the canal. That's what was on the Evergreen. And for those who are not aware, Evergreen was HC's code name. And as far as I know, it's owned and controlled by them. Yep, that's the other thing too, is the whole banking system, and I've been talking about this for a while. Again, I don't know a whole lot about that stuff, but Tony Franquito, my buddy out of California, he knows quite a bit about this stuff. And I did have him, he was posting some comments one time we were talking about this stuff and the ticker thingy. But the banking systems have started switching from the SWIFT system to QFS, which is Quantum Financial System. And it's my understanding that has been waiting for basically the whole world to get on this Quantum Financial System. Now, people do not know this, but tomorrow, October 1st, is it tomorrow? Or do we have one more day in September? I have to look. October 1st is the new fiscal year for government. Nope, tomorrow. Okay, there's no 31st day in September. So, tomorrow, that's right, fiscal year of government. So, another thing people might not be aware of, and they talk about, oh, the government's going to shut down because we haven't done our budget. Well, everything's done a year ahead of time. So the budget's already been done for this upcoming fiscal year. Now they're supposed to start on next year. But I'm not sure there's going to be that kind of a thing going on because of martial law, because of what is actually happening. Yeah. Basically the whole corrupt governmental system is being redone. This is a worldwide revolutionary war. Trump already said we're going back to 1776. Well, what was 1776? 1776 was a revolutionary war, not a civil war. Okay? And what we have to comprehend here is that, again, we are under a continuity of government, which means the old government is being done away with, and there's a new government being established. And this is the power of the commander-in-chief. Article 4, Section 4 for foreign invasion and domestic violence, which is internal insurrection. Okay, an attempt to overthrow the Constitution and war against the people. That's where we're at. Okay, this is the power of the president acting as commander-in-chief. This is Texas v. White. Okay, has the power to set up provisional government pending the outcome of the war. That's what's going on right now. Has been since Trump got into office. Right before that, okay, 2 federal directives for continuity government came from the military. This is a military operation. We are at World War. This is World War III. We're in it. Have been for quite some time. Executive Order 13818. Blocking the property of those involved in serious human rights abuse and corruption worldwide. This is where Trump and the administration have been going into foreign nations, states, countries, taking down bad governmental regimes, corrupt governmental regimes. Okay. Instituting new guards, right? Having legitimate elections, and then doing a treaty of peace. How do you do a treaty of peace if we're not at war? We're at war, folks. Make no mistake. That's fact. That's the truth. So, we can't ignore these facts, the truth. I know it's not talked about by many people out there about how we are physically at world war right now, and have been since December 20th, 2017 with Executive Order 13818. But that's the truth. So, let's take a look, shall we? Let's take a look here. Now, I had started reading this Law of War manual there before, but I ended up, it was in the web browser, and so I downloaded it here. And but let's just take a look at some of the basic stuff here. Table of contents. Purpose and scope of this manual. This is the Law of War. This is the latest updated one, 2023. So they've updated it again. Okay. But this one right here, definition of the Law of War. Customary international law. Okay. Now, if I remember right, let me see if I can find that one. Well, it can't be that. Where in the heck is it? No, not that one. No, it's not that one either. Oh, I bet it's this one. 1322. 1322. So yeah, it's going to be right here under that, I believe. Because that's page... Well, shit, that's page 30. 38. Aha, because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Okay. Now I wonder if this is going to be the same or not. Supposed to use selection of sources. Older sources sometimes cited because that source is particularly influential to demonstrate the origin of the legal proposition. Yeah. The very beginning stuff's kind of just boring. I want to really... Oh, there was something on the Lieber code. For the purposes of this manual, this is 1.3, definition of the law of war. The law of war is that part of international law that regulates the resort to armed force, the conduct of hostilities, and the protection of war victims in both international and non-international armed conflict. Belligerent occupation. This is something that really needs to be understood here. For example, after this so-called election there in 2020, what actually happened there? Military was federalized, active duty activated. 3 layers of fencing went around D.C. There was no inauguration. None of that happened, folks. Trump was actually inaugurated by the military as commander-in-chief. And that's why I keep saying, we do not have a president. It's not the type of government we have right now. We're under a continuity of government set up by Trump. This is a provisional government. And he keeps saying it again. Waiting for the people. It's up to the people. And I'm telling you, folks, if we, the people, do not reassemble government de jure, we're going to get what we get. So, I cannot press this enough that we, the people, need to reassemble. We need to come together, unite, and reassemble government de jure. Okay? Okay? So, yeah, you're right, Mark Bond, about the 11.3 for the belligerent occupation, but we're not even close to that. We're in the very beginning of this law of war manual. So, that 11.2, 11.3 stuff is way down the road. There's a lot more here to comprehend and to apply it to what's really going on. Okay? But yeah, that was became DC is a foreign occupied territory. It is a belligerent occupation. But there's all sorts of goodies here that I'm going to share with you tonight. And the relations between belligerent, neutral, and non-belligerent states. For the purpose of this manual, the law of war comprises treaties and customary international law applicable to the United States, like law of nations, like the common law. Oh, right. Notes on terminology, different definitions of the law of war. The law of war may be defined slightly differently in other publications. For example, the DoD issuances have defined the law of war more narrowly than the definition discussed in this section, by omitting reference to the part of the international law that regulates the resort to armed force. Law of war versus international humanitarian law, law of armed conflict. The law of war is often called the law of armed conflict. Both terms can be found in DoD directives and training materials. International humanitarian law is an alternative term for the law of war that may be understood to have the same substantive meaning as the law of war. In other cases, international humanitarian law is understood more narrowly than the law of war. All right, the law of war's relationship to other bodies of law. An issue that often confronts law of war practitioners is the relationship of law of war to other bodies of law, especially when rules in those bodies of law may appear to conflict with rules reflected in the law of war. These apparent conflicts are often resolved by considering the principle that the law of war is lex specialis, governing armed conflict. It is special law. Okay? How a law of war rule relates to a particular rule that is not grounded in the law of war may depend on the specific legal rule in question. Now, I can tell you right now, this is all written by the bar. These are bar members that wrote this law of war manual. But we should be going by the law of nations under that war and peace real international law, which we will see here in a minute. In general, the law of war may relate to other bodies of law. The law of war rules superseding rules in other bodies of law with respect to armed conflict, construing the rules in other bodies of law to avoid conflict with law of war rules. Law of war rules informing the content of general standards in other bodies of law, should such standards be construed to apply to armed conflict. And 4, law of war treaties explicitly incorporating concepts from other bodies of law, like Roman civil law. In some cases, it may be difficult to distinguish between these approaches, and different entities may apply different approaches to achieve the same result. Although there are different approaches, and although the ultimate resolution may depend on the specific rules and context, the law of war, as lex specialis of armed conflict, is the controlling body of law with regard to conduct of hostilities and the protection of war victims. The law of war as lex specialis governing armed conflict. The maxim lex specialis means that as a rule, the special rule overrides the general law. The rule that is more specifically directed towards the action receives priority because it takes better account of the particular features of the context in which the law is to be applied, thus creating a more equitable result and better reflecting the intent of those authorities that have made the law. The law of war has been developed with special consideration of the circumstances of war and challenges inherent in its regulation by law. Thus, for example, the exigencies of armed conflict cannot justify violating the law of war. Moreover, lawmakers sometimes have considered peacetime rules appropriate to apply during armed conflict, and in certain of these cases, they have explicitly incorporated such concepts into the law of war. Thus, traditionally, the law of war has been described as only authoritative rules of action between hostile armies, or as superseding ordinary law in the actual theater of military operations. Military operations. Similarly, law of war treaties have been viewed as a clear example of lex specialis in relation to treaties providing peacetime norms concerning the same subjects. I thought there was something about, number 18. See Lieber Code, Article 40. There exists no law or body of authoritative rules for action between hostile armies, except that branch of the law of nature and nations, which is called the law and uses of war on land. Now, we're going to go over there to that, and we're going to go through the Lieber Code here after this next section, because this is where that leads us to. So before we can even fully get into this, we should actually study the Lieber Code. Conflicts between the law of war, and other law may be resolved by construing such other law to avoid conflict with law of war rules. Underlying this approach is the fact that the law of war is firmly established in the customary international law as a well-developed body of law that is separate from the principles of law generally applicable in peace. Lawmakers have been understood not to amend that well-developed body of law absent affirmative evidence of an intention to do so. In a similar fashion, for comparison, the GEC deliberately excludes from its application the nationals of certain states in order to avoid certain complications or inconsistencies in procedures should both the GEC and the law applicable to normal diplomatic representation apply. In some cases, treaties explicitly clarify that they do not affect states' rights under the law of war. Now wait, what? They do not affect states' rights? For example, the 1944 Chicago Convention on Civil Aviation explicitly provides that it does not affect the freedom of action of states during armed conflict. However, even when not explicitly stated, infringements on the law of war through international agreements that primarily address situations other than armed conflict are not to be presumed. For example, the LOS Convention has been interpreted not to impair the states' rights during armed conflict, even though this principle is not explicitly stated in the treaty. In addition, the International Convention for the Suppression of Financing of Terrorism has been understood not to preclude any state party to the convention from conducting any legitimate activity against any lawful target in accordance with the law of armed conflict. In addition to treaties, domestic statutes have also been construed not to violate international law, including the law of war, if any other construction remains possible. Certain domestic statutes have been interpreted not to apply to situations addressed by the law of war because such intention was not made clear and unequivocal. The reality here again, and again, this law of war manual is done by the bar. Law of nations is the real international law. That's all been subverted. But let's just see. Using the law of war to determine the content of general standards if applied to armed conflict. Another way in which the law of war has been applied as lex specialis is to determine the content of a more general standard with respect to the situation of armed conflict. For example, the law of war has been used to inform the content of general authorizations to conduct military operations. As another example, the extent that the concept of due regard for the safety of civil aircraft may be deemed to apply during armed conflict. Where regard is due would be understood in terms of the requirements of the law of war. Similarly, to the extent that the concept of due regard for the rights of other states under the law of the sea may be deemed to apply during armed conflict. What regard is due would be understood in terms of the requirements of the law of war. Lastly, even where international courts or commissions have characterized human rights obligations as applicable during armed conflict, they generally have characterized the content of those obligations as determined by standards and tests drawn from the law of war. Okay. Explicit incorporation of concepts from other bodies of law into the law of war. In some cases, law of war treaties explicitly incorporate concepts from other bodies of law. For example, the peacetime property law concept of usufruct is made applicable to the duties of the occupying states. Similarly, the GC explicitly applies a peacetime rule with respect to nationals of the occupying power who, before the outbreak of hostilities, have sought refuge in the occupying territory. As another example, Common Article 3 of the 1949 Geneva Conventions incorporates by reference those judicial guarantees that are recognized as indispensable by civilized peoples. Restrictive and permissive character of the law of war. In certain respects, the law of war may be viewed as prohibitive. In other respects, the law of war may be viewed as permissive. The law of war is prohibitive law. The law of war that relates to the conduct of hostilities has generally been viewed as prohibitive law, in the same sense that it forbids rather than authorizes certain uses of force. For example, the lawfulness of the use of type of weapon does not depend on the absence of authorization, but on the contrary, on whether the weapon is prohibited. Now, in dealing with some of this stuff, we're looking at serious weapons of mass destruction, nuclear war. So, I don't know. I know that Trump and the administration have been really, really trying to push hard to get some treaties done about nuclear arms and to dismantle and to stop making them and those kinds of things. So, I don't know if some jackwagon, deep stater, satanic, whatever person out there may try to pull one, but I don't know. So, I'm thinking that they are prohibited, especially to be used here, but one rationale for this view is that the rules binding upon states in treaties and customary law reflects restrictions that they are accepted, and that states are otherwise independent entities with freedom to act. Thus, the authority to take actions under the law of war would be viewed as emanating from the state's rights as a sovereign entity rather than from any particular instrument of international law. The prohibitive character of the law of war that relates to the conduct of hostilities is also consistent with the view that jus in bello applies to aggressors and defenders alike. The fact that an aggressor complies with jus in bello does not justify the legality of its military operations under jus ad bellum. That was 41. Refer to 352. So that's later down. Because we're still in the ones here. The lack of express prohibition in treaty law, however, does not necessarily mean an action is lawful under jus and bello. When no specific rule applies, the principles of the law of war from the General Guide for Conduct During War. Law of war is permissive law. Although the law of war is generally viewed as prohibitive law, in some respects, especially in the context of domestic law, the law of war may be viewed as permissive or even as a source of authority. Really shouldn't be. It's supposed to be a manual. For example, the principle of military necessity in the customary law of war may be viewed as justifying or permitting certain acts. Similarly, under the law of belligerent occupation, the fact of occupation is the basis for the occupying power to exercise authority over the occupied territory. In addition, law of war treaties also sometimes recognize states' authorities in war. The purpose of the law of war, the main purpose of the law of war are protecting combatants, non-combatants, and civilians from unnecessary suffering. So this is supposed to be the intent. Okay? Providing certain fundamental protections for persons who fall into the hands of the enemy, particularly prisoners of war, civilians, military wounded, sick, and shipwrecked. Facilitating the restoration of peace. assisting military commanders in ensuring the disciplined and efficient use of military force and preserving the professionalism and humanity of combatants. So that particular section there, that's the 1.3 section. I'm going to jump over to the Lieber code because we need to read this to really fully comprehend the rest of this. Now there's the Article 40. There exists no law or body authoritative rules or action between hostile armies except that branch of the law of nature and nations, which is called the law and usage of war on land. So there it is, the law of nature and the law of nations. In the Lieber Code, why is it not really mentioned in the Law of War Manual? Because it's written by the bar, and this is code. This is Roman civil law. It's funny because this is supposed to be referred to as a Lieber Code. But as I said before, there's nothing else out there. But then they refer to Article 40. Well, Article 40 says the law of nature and nations. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go back up to the top because this is just loaded with information. Okay, this is the General Order Number 100, the Lieber Code, Instructions for the Government of Armies of the United States in the Field. Okay, this is done by Lincoln in 1863. Martial law, military jurisdiction, military necessity, and retaliation. Article 1. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. So, we're talking about the deep state. That's your hostile enemy. And everybody that's all involved in that stuff, right? Those are the hostile enemy. That's the belligerent occupation. Over here on Telegram, Nance says, reading United States Code. Go read some Roman civil law, sure. 28, Section 1333, plain as day, Federal District Court, original subject matter jurisdiction over any civil case of admiralty or maritime jurisdiction. How about we just read the supreme law of the land, the common law of the land? Well, that's Article 3, Section 2, real law, not Roman civil law, the code. That's the jurisdiction, right? Admiralty and maritime jurisdiction is in Article 3, Section 2. That's the only jurisdiction that the federal courts have. Article 3, Section 2. Article 3, Section 1, 2, and 3. Martial law, this is Article 2. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the what? Commander-in-Chief. Not President. Commander-in-Chief. Okay. Or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war. When the occupation of a place or territory continues beyond the conclusion of peace as one of the conditions of the same. Article 3. Martial law in a hostile country consists in the suspension by the occupying military authority of the criminal and civil law, and of the domestic administration and government in the occupied place or territory, and in the substitution of military rule and force for the same, as well in the dictation of general laws, as far as military necessity requires this suspension, substitution, or dictation. So, what does that really mean? Commander of the forces may proclaim that the administration of all civil and penal law should continue either wholly or in part as in times of peace unless otherwise ordered by the military authority. Proclamation, that's proclaim. Now this is where I'm going to go back to Trump's proclamations. And for the ease of that, I'm going to go for ones that I'd already made. Is this the one? This was issued on December 8th, 2017. Human Rights Day, Bill of Rights Day, and the week beginning December 10th is Human Rights. Our great country was forged in the fires of a revolution to overthrow the rule of a tyrant by a free people who understood the fundamental truth that liberty is best secured when the state's powers is carefully limited. From the Declaration of Independence to the Constitution and through the Bill of Rights, our country and our people have always known the true God-given nature of liberty and the ability of law to safeguard it against the state. For 226 years, the final piece of this freedom-sustaining bulwark, the Bill of Rights, has formed the bedrock of the constitutional protections every American holds dear as their birthright. He is proclaiming the law. On Bill of Rights Day, we recognize the importance of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution to protecting our liberty and freedom against the inevitable encroachment of government. Our founding fathers understood the threat of expansive, omnipresent government from the beginning of our republic. Therefore, they endeavored to enhance the Constitution with the Bill of Rights, a specific enumeration of fundamental rights that would prevail even against a future government inclined to abuse the power it has over the lives of citizens. On June 8, 1789, James Madison, originally skeptical of the need for a Bill of Rights, introduced in the Congress several amendments to the Constitution that would eventually form the Bill of Rights. During the ensuing debates, Madison told the Congress that because all power is subject to abuse, it was worth taking steps to ensure that such abuse may be guarded against in a more secure manner. Many of the rights set forth in the amendments Madison introduced that day are quite familiar to us as Americans. The right to worship as we please, the right to speak our minds and consciences, the right to firearms to protect ourselves and our loved ones. Oh, that's a right? That's right. The right to be from unwarranted government searches and seizures. The right to a jury of our fellow citizens when accused of legal wrongdoing. Others, like the right to object to housing troops in our homes during peacetime, are often thought of as relics of a bygone era. Regardless of their familiarity or applicability to our daily lives, however, each clause of the Bill of Rights addresses profound and real abuses the founders faced, and each is crafted and locked into law to protect us and future generations from their repetition. Oh, but the Bill of Rights doesn't apply to the states except for by and through the 14th Amendment. Hogwash. The states are the ones that created the federal government. The states are the ones that created the Bill of Rights. And our rights are long antecedent to the formation of government. Every single last right, 1 through 8, that is enumerated, was already our rights. I would say, except with the exception of probably 3, quartering troops. I haven't really found that one yet. But the fact is all of those other rights have all can be found in history, long before the Bill of Rights. Which, again, American Jurisprudence, Volume 16, Constitutional Law, Section 100, Bills of Rights and those merely declaratory of the common law. That's right. It's already the law. The common law. Lex non scripta, the unwritten law. But even throughout history, these rights were written down. Since its adoption, the reach of the Bill of Rights has spread far beyond America's shores. As George Washington rightfully said, liberty, when it begins to take root, is a plant of rapid growth. For example, in the wake of the devastation of World War II, the spirit of the Bill of Rights inspired the United Nations General Assembly to adopt the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. But again, these are it's already the law. I don't care if they adopted it or not. It's law. Period. Before government was even instituted, it was the law. Just like the Bill of Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is grounded in the recognition that just governments must respect the fundamental liberty and dignity of their people. By enumerating core rights that should be immune from government encroachment, both the Bill of Rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights have helped fuel remarkable prosperity and achievement around the world. During Human Rights Day, Bill of Rights Day, and Human Rights Week, we rededicate ourselves to steadfastly and faithfully defending the Bill of Rights and human rights. Our God-given fundamental rights, well, now we're talking about natural rights from the laws of nature. We're not talking about those enumerated rights over there, are soon overcome if not safeguarded by the people. Okay? By the people. We therefore also reflect upon the many individuals who are unable to enjoy the God-given rights that we as Americans know are secure. No, I don't know that they're secure. I can tell you right now, they're not. We remember those suffering under the yoke of authoritarianism and extremism for doing nothing more than standing up to injustice or daring to profess or practice their religion, and we acknowledge those imprisoned or in peril simply because of their political views or their sex. Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, by virtue and authority vested in me as Constitution, by the Constitution and laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim December 10th as Human Rights Day, December 15th as Bill of Rights Day, and the week beginning December 10th as Human Rights Week. Now, what does he say? I call upon the people of the United States to mark this observance with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Okay? That's just one. Thought I had more of these. Establishing the rule of law, those ones. Oh, wait. Haha. Three, 1, 8. I don't see the ones on rule of law. That's Executive Order 13818. Amendments to the Manual for Courts Martial. I wonder what this one was. This is, oh, you sucker. Law Day, May 1st. Yeah. Another proclamation, Law Day. Just one more example. Today we celebrate Law Days. We have since President Dwight D. Eisenhower first commemorated it in 1958 and reflect upon our great heritage of liberty, justice, and equality. Our founders risked their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor in defense of these values. More than 240 years ago, they set pen to paper and declared to the world that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Declaration of Independence thus set our nation on its revolutionary and transformative path to protecting people's inherent individual rights and liberties from the tyranny of an elite few who might use the powers of the state to trample upon them. To protect the values for which they fought, the framers of our Constitution created a government of limited and separated powers that enables the rule of law to prevail over the whims of government officials. As the great Justice Anton Scalia frequently observed, every dictatorship has a Bill of Rights, but paper rights alone will not preserve liberty. It is our Constitution's clear division of the sovereign's power, vesting the power to create laws in the Congress, the power to execute laws in the President, and the power to interpret laws in the independent judiciary that enables us to remain free and in control of our government. What a bunch of hogwash that is because all political power is inherent in the people. We're the ones supposed to do that stuff, not Congress. Congress has delegated very limited powers to regulate foreign commerce and to declare war. That's about it. Federalist 45. So, recognize as President Ronald Reagan did that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Okay, this is where we're at, folks. It's been more than one generation, and nobody's done anything. It's been 3, 4, 5 generations. It's sad. We're in a very sad state of affairs. Today we pay tribute to the government of laws and not of men that forms the foundation of our freedom. Therefore, on this Law Day, we rededicate ourselves to the rule of law, to the separation of powers, and the words of President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, to the preservation of government of the people, by the people, for the people. See, it's supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. in defense of our rights. That's the whole intent. But it doesn't say of the public servant, by the public servant, for the public servant. It doesn't say by state nationals, American state nationals. It says the people. So, again, the people is the proper status. Okay? So, just a little tidbit here of some of the things. And I wish I don't know. Human Rights Day, that's one we just covered. Where's the one, I swear? Oh, yeah. I wonder. This one was it. September 15th, 2017 on Constitution Day. Well, maybe just a weep too big there. September 15th, 2017, Constitution Day, Citizenship Day, and Constitution Week. Proclamation on the 230th anniversary of the Constitution of the United States, we celebrate the enduring brilliance of our founding charter and recognize all American citizens older than any other written constitution in use today. Our Constitution establishes a system of checks and balances designed to preserve liberty, promote prosperity, and ensure the security of our beloved country. On this day and during this week, we recall the people and the principles that made our nation great and commit ourselves to restoring that greatness. This is the Make America Great Again. Our Constitution is founded on a fundamental trust in America's citizens. No, the people. We, the people. The Constitution proclaims are the source of all governmental authority. We are, as President Lincoln declared in the war-torn fields of Gettysburg, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. That is why we must be particularly mindful of a would-be ruling class that has lost sight of this foundational truth. In the drive for progressive reform, our federal government has grown beyond belief and has layered regulation on top of burdensome regulation. American citizens and businesses face an unrelenting onslaught of rules and regulations adopted by an army of regulators unaccountable to the citizens they seek to control. Those unelected bureaucrats, FDA, whatever, EPA, all that. FBI, CIA, of course. The Fed, Federal Reserve, IRS. My solemn promise as president is to return power to the American people. Okay? He's telling us, he's been telling us, right straight from the get-go, right out of the gate, right at the inauguration speech, that he was putting the power back into the people's hands. The people. Not American state nationals. You can hear somebody talking about, oh, you got to correct your status and become an American state national. If you hear anybody talking like that, just run. Literally run away from them. And before you run away from them, ask them a simple question. Can you cite the law to support your claims about an American state national? And I'm talking about law, not code. Every single one that I've asked that question, well, I don't know. Oh, Black's Law Dictionary. I said, asked you to cite law. To the workers and the warriors who made this nation great and will make it great again. Restoring this founding principle of accountability requires us to once again respect the structural safeguards of our great Constitution. The framers of our Constitution sought to preserve liberty by separating government power. In our constitutional system, the Congress is charged with authoring and amending the laws in accordance with its beliefs about what will benefit our country. No, they're not supposed to be amending the laws. They're supposed to be making statutes, regulations. That's not law. Enactments of the legislature are not law of the land. That's not law. It's statutes, supposed to be, not code. The president's duty is to execute those laws and protect the nation, consistent with the Constitution. Just like making statutes by the legislature is supposed to be consistent with the Constitution, based on subject matter jurisdiction delegated in the Constitution itself. And the judiciary's role is to faithfully apply the Constitution and the laws to resolve specific cases and controversies. Modern government, however, has rebelled against the constraints inherent in these defined roles, abandoning that original design in favor of a centralized system of out-of-control agencies that claim independence from elected leaders and demand deference from the courts. That's the Chevron deference. In other words, these executive agencies have been dictating what the laws of their own creation are. Well, get rid of that Administrative Procedures Act, because that's what delegated the executive agencies the power to make their own. They call it rule making. Why don't they call it law making? Because they don't make law. It's not law. But hey, this is a complete subversion of the Constitution. This is treason. But again, why didn't they challenge the entire Administrative Procedures Act of 1946 and just get rid of the whole thing? Forget the Chevron difference. Let's just get rid of all of it. One fell swoop, it'd be done. Oh, no, we can't do that. But Trump knows. They know. These out-of-control agencies that claim independence from elected leaders and demand deference from the courts. On this day and during this week, I call on all citizens and all branches of government to reflect on the original meaning of our Constitution and to recall the founding principles we too frequently forget. Our government exists to preserve freedom and to serve the people, not citizens. We are accountable to the people. Oh, see, you don't have a problem of saying people here. Why not say people there? And the public deserves clear, intelligible laws that are enacted through an open constitutional process. Well, that's the problem. We already have the law before we even instituted the Constitution, the fundamental law. Okay? As the elected head of the executive branch, I call on federal agencies to reduce the crushing burdens on the regulatory state and to restore fairness, transparency, and due process in all regulatory matters. We are here to enable the greatness of our nation, not to restrain it. I call on the Congress to take up critical legislative measures and to work together to set free the full potential of our people. I call on federal judges to apply the law as it exists, not as they wish it to be. To exercise, in the words of our founders, neither force nor will, but merely judgment. And I call on all American citizens to pursue greatness in their lives through hard work in the instances that their government exists only by the people and for the people of this great land. The Congress, by joint resolution February 29, 1952, which is all garbage, Designated September 17th Constitution Day and Citizenship Day, and by joint resolution on August 2nd, 1956, requested that the President proclaim the week beginning September 17th and ending September 23rd of each year as Constitution Week. You know, just blows my mind how they can do all this stuff and not know it. So there's just some tidbits of stuff, okay? I want to go back to the under the proclamation stuff here. What did he do? There's other ones, reestablishing the rule of law. Two different ones on reestablishing the rule of law. Bill of Rights, the bedrock. Article 4, martial law is simply military authority exercised in accordance with the laws and usages of war. Wouldn't that be the laws of nature and the law of nations, as stated above? Military oppression is not martial law. It is the abuse of the power which the law confers. As martial law is executed by military force, it is incumbent upon those who administer it to be strictly guided by the principles of justice, honor, and humanity, virtues, adorning a soldier even more than other men, for the very reason that he possesses the power of his arms against the unarmed. Martial law, Article 5, martial law should be less stringent in places and countries fully occupied and fairly conquered. Much greater severity may be exercised in places or regions where actual hostiles exist or are expected and must be prepared for. Its most complete sway is allowed, even in the commander's own country, when face to face with the enemy, because of the absolute necessities of the case and of the paramount duty to defend the country against invasion. To save the country is paramount to all other considerations. What's going on? That's what's going on. That's what's been happening, is to save America, to pull it back out of the depths of the deep state corruption. A bunch of Satanists, satanic frickin' pedophiles. International bankers. Article 6. All civil and penal law shall continue to take its usual course in the enemy's places and territories under martial law, unless interrupted or stopped by order of the occupying military power. But all the functions of the hostile government, legislative, executive, or administrative, whether of a general, provincial, or local character, cease under martial law, or continue only with the sanction, or if deemed necessary, the participation of the occupier or the invader. Martial law extends to property and to persons, whether they are subjects of the enemy or aliens to that government. Doesn't matter. Article 8. Consuls among American and European nations are not diplomatic agents. Nevertheless, their offices and persons will be subjected to martial law in cases of urgent necessity only. Their property and businesses are not exempted. Any delinquency they commit against the established military rule may be punished, as in the case of any other inhabitant, and such punishment furnishes no reasonable ground for international complaint. All right, so things like, I don't know, China buying up land here in America. Executive Order 13818, if they're involved in serious human rights abuse and corruption, civil asset forfeiture. I'm going to seize that land. That's right. It's going to happen. Article 9. The functions of ambassadors, ministers, and public agents, other diplomatic agents accredited by neutral powers of the hostile government cease so far as regards the displaced government. But the conquering or occupying power usually recognizes them as temporary, accredited to itself. Article 10. Martial law affects chiefly the policy and collection of public revenue and taxes. See, still writing it as policy back then, not police. Whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, and refers mainly to the support and efficacy of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. Article 11. The law of war does not only disclaim all cruelty and bad faith concerning engagements concluded with the enemy during the war, but also the breaking of stipulations solemnly contracted by the belligerents in time of peace, and avowedly intended to remain in force in case of war between the contracting powers. It disclaims all extortions and other transactions for individual gain, all acts of private revenge, or convenience at such acts. Offenses to the contrary shall be severely punished, and especially so if committed by officers. Whenever feasible, martial law is carried out in cases of individual offenders by military courts. But sentences of death shall be executed only with the approval of the chief executive, provided the urgency of the case does not require a speedier execution, and then only with the approval of the chief commander. Imagine that! Remember when I put that out there a few years ago? Before Trump, before the 2020 garbage? That the DOJ was trying to stop Trump from doing any more executions? Remember when Trump said speedy trial, speedy execution? That's what's been happening, folks. Whether you believe that or not is irrelevant. Facts are facts. That stuff has been happening. Okay? Article 13. Military jurisdiction is of two kinds. Now, here's one of those key pieces. First, that which is conferred and defined by statute. Second, that which is derived from what? The common law of war. Oh, you mean there's common law? There is common law of war. Law of nations. Military offenses under statute law must be tried in the manner therein directed. But military offenses which do not come within the statute must be tried and punished under the common law of war. The character of the courts which exercise these jurisdiction depends upon the local laws of each particular country. In the armies of the United States, the first is exercised by courts martial, while cases which do not come within the rules of articles of war or the jurisdiction conferred by statute courts martial are tried by military commissions. Okay, so what did we just learn here? Courts martials. Why do you think Trump dug up that executive order from 1984 and made amendments to the manual for courts martial? Because they were getting prepared for what's been going on, for what's happening. Okay? Right, yeah, he did, pardon me, he did say quick trial. Not speedy trial, quick trials. Quick executions. So, yes, Diesel D's, that's it. The common law of war is found in the law of nations. That's part of fundamental law. International law. Okay, so something I wanted to point out here is, you know, when we go into these courtrooms, is there not gold fringe around the flag? That's your sign, signification of a captured nation under martial law. Military necessity, as understood by modern civilized nations, consists of the necessity of those measures which are indispensable for securing the ends of the war, and which are lawful according to the modern law and usages of war, which is supposed to come when anytime, remember above, when we talk about the modern law and usages of war, that refers to the law of nations, the common law of war. Article 15, military necessity admits of all direct destruction. Oh, okay, pay attention here. Military necessity admits of all direct destruction of life or limb of armed enemies and of other persons whose destruction is incidentally unavoidable in the armed contest of the war. It allows of the capturing of every armed enemy and every enemy of importance to the hostile government or of a peculiar danger to the captor. It allows of all destruction of property and obstruction of the ways and channels of traffic, travel, or communication, and of all withholding of subsistence or means of life from the enemy, of the appropriation of whether the enemy's country affords necessary for the subsistence and safety of the army, and of such deception as does not involve the breaking of good faith, either positively pledged regarding agreements entered into during the war, or supposed by the modern law of war to exist. Men who take up arms against one another in public war do not cease, on this account, to be moral beings, responsible to one another and to God. This is war, folks. And what are we seeing right now? Out there in North Carolina and all that area out there east. That's what's going on. If you think that hurricanes that came through there magically appeared just out of nature, you're fooling yourself. This was all manipulated and controlled. It's called HARP. They have the ability to modify the weather, to create weather. I don't think there's anybody alive today that knows what weather is actually supposed to be like from nature, naturally, without any man messing with it. I don't know. Are we at a point where we have to make the weather the way it is? I don't know. Article 16. Military necessity does not admit of cruelty. That is, the infliction of suffering for the sake of suffering or for revenge. Nor of maiming or wounding except in fight. Nor of torture to extort confessions. We all know that stuff still happens. It does not admit of the use of poison in any way. What about the jabs? What about in our food? Nor of the wanton devastation of a district. It admits of deception, but disclaims acts of perfidy. And in general, military necessity does not include any act of hostility, which makes the return to peace unnecessarily difficult. So, on one hand, Trump and the military have been trying to do this in a way with the least amount of casualties, the least amount of the civilian population freaking out, because they're not awake yet. That's what the last 4 years have been about. The first 4 years with Trump was to give us an idea of how things can be. Our economy was great. The lowest amount of unemployment across the board in history. Our economy was doing really good. Gas prices were low, groceries were low, houses were decent, right? We all remember that, right? So the last 4 years, we're going through hell to wake up the people because, well, some people just aren't awake. And they need to feel the pain. And it sucks for those of us that were already awake. Because we're suffering right along with other people, but much longer, because we've already been suffering for a long time. So it's getting to the point where I do believe that we've hit a point that a significant portion is at least of the population is at least supporting Trump. I think we've reached that 80% mark. That we're tired of the corruption. They may not fully comprehend it. They may not have an idea of how corrupt the courts are, or how corrupt the Federal Reserve is, the international banking cartel, the drug cartel, how bad human child trafficking is. You may not know that, but look, P. Diddy stuff's coming out. It's already been coming out with Epstein, right? What about the 2 laptops? Yeah, let's not talk about that stuff. How come none of that has ever really made it into the mainstream media? How come they don't talk about the laptops? What happened to Podesta's laptop? What about that one? What about the Clinton servers, private servers? Right, Jax? I'm tired of this. You and me both. we're here to wake up the ones that aren't awake yet. And to help educate the general population, even worldwide. Article 17, war is not carried on by arms alone. It is lawful to starve the hostile belligerent, armed or unarmed, so that it leads to the speedier subjection of the enemy. Article 18, when a commander of a besieged place expels the non-combatants in order to lessen the number of those who consume his stock of provisions, it is lawful, though in extreme measure, to drive them back, so as to hasten on the surrender. In other words, they can take their food, starve them out. What happened to Anthony Weiner's laptop? How about that one? There's that one too. We can starve them out. But the problem is who are the real enemies here? That's what makes this war different. especially here in America. A lot of the puppet masters are outside of the United States of America. Like Ukraine, Israel, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran. But mostly Ukraine and Israel. Article 19. Commanders, whenever admissible, inform the enemy of their intention to bombard a place, so that the non-combatants, and especially the women and children, may be removed before the bombardment commences. But it is no infraction of the common law of war to omit this to inform the enemy. Surprise may be a necessity. This is war, folks. Article 20. Public war is a state of armed hostility between sovereign nations or governments. It is a law and requisite of civilized existence that men live in political, continuous societies, forming organized units called states or nations, whose constituents bear, enjoy, suffer, advance, and retrograde together in peace and in war. I feel bad for those that are caught in the middle of all this. I mean, technically speaking, we all are, but there's some that are being directly affected. There's people dying from this stuff right now. Nevertheless, a civilization, this is Article 22, nevertheless, a civilization has advanced during the last centuries, so has likewise steadily advanced, especially in war on land. The distinction between the private individual belonging to a hostile country and the hostile country itself, with its men in arms. The principle has been more and more acknowledged that the unarmed citizen is to be spared in person, property, and honor as much as the exigencies of war will admit. But if you're going to bomb a place or use a hurricane, causing devastation, but on the flip side, the white hats, the military, they're going in and cleaning up. This is what war looks like, folks. Article 23. Private citizens are no longer murdered, enslaved, or carried off to distant parts, and the inoffensive individual is as little disturbed in his private relations as the commander of the hostile troops can afford to grant in the overruling demands of a vigorous war. So, if something does come around, and there is military in the streets, and you're told to go inside, that there's a curfew, like it is in North Carolina, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. is a curfew. You will be in your homes between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Do it. Because that's when the military is on the move taking care of what they need to take care of. Whether it's actually doing cleanup, restoring power, roads, that kind of stuff, or actually going and arresting bad actors, deep staters. It may just be in the area. What a coincidence. Might also be to destroy certain buildings that, say, like Freemasons have built. That these Satanists, satanic people have built. Okay? There's a lot more going on than just a hurricane comes through looking at some of the radar, screen radars showing the radars of the thing, of the hurricanes. You've seen these, explosions happening. That's what's going on. They're devastating certain areas. And remember, I've talked about this before. There's a list out there of places to be destroyed. Georgia Guidestones was one of them. They've already been destroyed. It was on that list. Washington, D.C., or District of Columbia, is on that list to be destroyed as well. Which exactly why so-called D.C. has been cleared out. It's a freaking ghost town. There's not a whole lot going on there, folks. Now, my brother Tony Pellegrino, trying to file a petition for redress of grievances out there, trying to get a process server to go in and serve. They tried 3 different times to get in to the Capitol. They can't get in. And that's a legitimate process server. How come they can't get in to serve a petition? Capitol's supposed to be open, right? And you're still with us, Mark? Biggest Freemason lodge you've seen and tease the hell out of them? Yeah, London Bridge in Arizona. That may be on the list. It is on the list. Article 24, the almost universal rule in remote times was, and continues to be with barbarous armies, that the private individual of the hostile country is destined to suffer every privation of liberty and protection, and every disruption of family ties. Protection was, and still is, with uncivilized people, the exception. So, something I've said before, I'll say it again. Might be too late for some. Food, water, beans and bullets. Be prepared for the unexpected. Penguin 6 is one of the ones that I did used to watch, and Nancy Drew was the other one. Penguin 6 may not have, I don't know why you would say he never mentions how empty DC is, but he rides around on that little scooter, and you can see that it's empty. There's nobody there. Places are boarded up. There's nobody there. And to clarify for you Diesel Ds, no one to serve it to, no. Can't get in the Capitol to serve it. They won't let anybody in the Capitol. Okay? Apparently, I see you, brother. Mark, you're still with us. Be careful. Okay. Article 26. Commanding generals may cause the magistrates and civil officers of the hostile country to take the oath of temporary allegiance or an oath of fidelity to their own victorious government or rulers, and they may expel everyone who declines to do so. But whether they do so or not, the people and their civil officers owe strict obedience to them as long as they hold sway over the district or country at the peril of their lives. Okay. Continuity of government, setting up a provisional government. There are people that Trump and the administration, the military, has made agreements with. There's others that decline. They were Gitmo'd, possibly executed. Okay. This is one of the things right here that's going on. Article 26. Article 27. The law of war can no more wholly dispense with retaliation than can the law of nations, of which it is a branch. Law of nations. Yet civilized nations acknowledge retaliation as the sternest feature of war. A reckless enemy often leaves to his opponent no other means of securing himself against the repetition of barbarous outrage. So, the way this is being played is they're waiting for them to do the attacks. And once they attack, then we can defend. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Dr. Fauci is long gone. A lot of these people are gone. Biden, that's not the real Biden, guys. And I'm not even sure if that's the real Kamala Harris either. This has all been a setup since 2020. I'm not so sure there isn't a whole bunch of members of Congress missing. Because we've never really seen what's really going on in there. And apparently they're not letting anybody in the Capitol to see what's really not happening there. They're not letting anybody in the Capitol. So they may not even be what little, very few supposed members of Congress that are still active may not even be meeting at the Capitol. Article 28. Retaliation will therefore never be resorted to as a measure of mere revenge, but only as a means of protective retribution, and moreover, cautiously and unavoidably. That is to say, retaliation shall only be resorted to after careful inquiry into the real occurrence and the character of the misdeeds that may demand retribution. Unjust or inconsiderate retaliation removes the belligerents farther and farther from the mitigating rules of regular war, and by rapid steps leads them nearer to the internecine wars of savages. Whatever that one is. Article 29. Modern times are distinguished from earlier ages by the existence, at one time and the same time, of many nations and great governments who related to one another in close intercourse. Peace is their normal condition. War is the exception. The ultimate object of a modern war is renewed state of peace. The more vigorously wars are pursued, the better it is for humanity. Sharp wars are brief. Well, this particular war we're in now, this is a long, drawn out deal. This is huge, folks. This is worldwide. Okay? Just say. Just say. Article 30. Ever since the formation and coexistence of modern nations, and ever since wars have become great national wars, war has come to be acknowledged not to be its own end, but the means to obtain great ends of state, or to consist in defense against wrong. And that's where we're at. Defense against wrong. And no conventional restriction of the modes adopted to injure the enemy is any longer admitted, but the law of war imposes many limitations and restrictions on principles of justice, faith, and honor. So, hopefully, people can grasp the concept of what I'm talking about and some of these pieces of the puzzle about the president acting as commander-in-chief has that power to set up provisional government, to declare the law by proclamation. And that's what he has done. Now, because the corruption is such at a high level throughout the whole United States, but the whole world, and when I'm talking about the corruption in the United States is about the courts, the police, the prosecutors. It's all, even the whole thing, the legislative, executive, and judicial branch. All three branches are corrupt nationwide, state and federal. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got the Code of Civil Procedure Act that altered the fundamental law from the common law to the Roman civil law of the Code. And then you have the Administrative Procedures Act that's altered our form of government and giving power to the executive agencies, these unelected bureaucrats, the power to make their own shit made up. And then they get to tell the judicial branch what their scope and authority is and what their own rules mean. That's the Chevron deference. That just got the kibosh put to it. No, the judicial branch is the one that's supposed to have the power to interpret whether or not the statute comes in conflict with the Constitution or common law. Again, Hale versus Hinkle. There's a reserved right in the legislature to do an investigation to see if the corporation has exceeded the laws of its creation. But see, that's supposed to be in the legislature. Well, they've screwed everything up. None of the three branches of government are properly exercising powers that properly belong to them, because this is all willy-nilly under Roman civil law, the Code. Not the Constitution, not the common law, not the law of nations, not the laws of nature. We need the people. We need the people to come together and to reassemble government de jure. So when all this dust settles, in some instances, literally, that the people are ready to go. national-assembly.net. This is where we're meeting. We have our calls Thursday nights. Conference call info is on this tab right here. Okay? You can do a straight call in, but I highly recommend downloading and installing the free conference call app. Now, here's a tutorial on YouTube for your smartphones. Here's a tutorial on YouTube for your desktop computers, laptops, and all that. This is the link to join through free conference call. It can be done through the web. So for those that have internet, you may be able to do that way. But download the app. It's especially when it comes to screen sharing. If you don't have the app, you don't get to see it. Okay? So, Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We do the roll call thing for the states. And I highly recommend people just mute yourself right from the get-go. Unless you're going to seek to speak, leave yourself muted. And so many times we hear people doing dishes in the background or watching TV, whatever. And I know people make mistakes. But that's why we're trying to reiterate this here right now. Mute yourselves when you're not speaking. Okay? It's disruptive. All right, under the Forums and Blog tab, National Assembly Forums. Scroll down here to where it's the 50 nation states. All of the states are here. You have your introduction. You can do introductions. Hi, I'm new here. I'm from this particular state, territory, and you're introducing yourself. Okay? Then here's the general chat. And then the historical documents. This is where we need to go. Get yourself in here. Otherwise, get on with Thursday night calls. You can send an email right here. Contact us. Email goes to contentmanager1 at yahoo.com and say, hey, I'm from Texas. I'd like to get connected. I'm from so-and-so. I'm from wherever. And you want to get connected with other people in your territory. Okay? So, we need to reassemble government de jure. Plain and simple. No ifs, ands, or buts. This is the legitimate ones. These are the people that have already done it. Okay, Michigan and Alaska being the two main ones, but Michigan since 2012. 21 requisitions to Trump and the military. Even before Trump. Okay? A lot of things have been going on with the National Assembly, with Michigan. Alright, now for me, here's my website, kirkslawcorner.com. Links to my social medias here. Facebook, Telegram, Patreon, YouTube, Rumble, and X, which, again, X, for some reason, put the kibosh on doing lives from there, other than from my phone, not on my desktop. Weird. Maybe I should just go live from my phone and hold my phone up here and broadcast. I don't know. Patreon. Okay, that's my my way of doing things here in the private side. For donations, anybody who wants to do like a monthly type thing, tier 1, tier 2, $5, $10 a month. Okay. Tier 3 is Wednesday night workshop. Tier 4 is for those who want to have one-on-one time with me. You want to talk about your personal case or whatever. That's tier 4. Okay. For any other regular donations through the snail mail, that's down here. Okay, 6477 West Fairview Avenue, Suite G is in Golf. Boise, Idaho 83704. That's for postal money orders, renter money orders, cash, wrapped aluminum foil, gold, silver coinage, anything else that you want to consider for donations to help support me in my endeavors and everything that I do out here for free. Because somebody's got to do this. And I want to thank all the patrons on Patreon now, whether you're tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or tier 4. And those that have sent donations privately through the snail mail. Digitally, PayPal's been taken down, Cash App's been taken down, Venmo's been taken down. And I just really haven't spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out. How much for X? Jax, what are you talking about? How much for X? Anyways, maybe, are you talking about how much is it for a subscription to X? I don't know. Maybe that's what you're talking about. Anywho's, I do have a library tab here. I do have free educational series on YouTube. Here's episode 1. You can start it here. You can watch it here. It may work you through all of them right here. Then you have the link right here. You just click on that. That'll take you right to it. You can click on the channel and then look for the playlist. There's actually extra 3 episodes so that I've added into the educational series of 1 through 8. Thank you for your comments out here. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all. And then again, the library tab. Great place to start reading. Right at the very beginning. Treatise on Arrest and False Imprisonment, the Authority of Law, the Law of Nations, Report on the Commission on Alienable Rights. Then you get into Lex Parliamentaria Americana, the law and practice of the legislative assemblies of the United States of America. Mason's Manual. This is the Jefferson's Manual, and this is the 1953 edition of Mason's Manual. Joseph Story's Commentaries on the Constitution. Bouvet's Law Dictionary, Black's Law Dictionary, Maxims of Law. Okay. So, there's the basics over here for Kirk's Law Corner. All sorts of good stuff there. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for watching later for those who just can't make it for the live. Especially those that don't even have internet access right now. God bless you all. God bless America. God bless the world. God bless the people, men and women, children, worldwide. God created man, free and equal. Okay? We'll see you next Monday night for Monday Night Law. And then we'll see those in Patreon Wednesday night. And then Thursday night. And tentatively speaking, I think I'm going to be leaving town on the 8th. I'm going to be going hunting. So, it may be a week or so before I'm back to civilization. But we'll discuss more of that in Wednesday night for those in Wednesday night workshop. And next Monday Night Law will be the last Monday night for at least a week. Okay? Again, food, water, beans and bullets. Be prepared to defend yourself. Okay? God bless.